And welcome to Small Biz Matters here in the studios of Triple H 100.1 FM. You are listening to Alexi Boyd with another fantastic guest, a sprawling education ready for you for small businesses and lots of great things to think about. We are midway through the year, everyone. If you missed any of last week's show, we were, of course, interviewing the ATO and talking about getting your end of financial year stuff under wraps. But also what I enjoyed about that conversation was, what do they expect to see? What are they hoping to see from you? And what do you do if you're a bit behind with your tax too? So it's great to hear it from the horse's mouth. If you missed any of last week's show, you can, of course, podcast it wherever you get your podcasts and on our website, smallbizmatters.com.au. Now, it's another great guest in the studio today. We're talking all about change management, and it actually occurred to me a little while ago that I haven't actually covered this, which is a fairly fundamental part of running a business. Now, we expect ourselves to be flexible and adaptable and nimble, and that's what our strengths are, and we actually take great pride in that as small businesses. And we also know that we need to evolve along with software, and we know that's better, a more efficient way to work. So why are we so fearful of change? Is it basically because we're avoiding putting off our clients with a new process? Is it our employees who are nervous, or is it just us who's stuck in our own self-made rut, avoiding change because of the fear of something new? I will put my hand up and say that I'm not a fan of change, so I'm hoping to learn lots today. Now, change management in the corporate world is handled by entire consulting firms like KPMG or Deloitte, big names like that. And it's hard enough in small business to keep on top of existing processes, let alone creating what could potentially be unnecessary change for ourselves. And there's the ever-evolving compliance changes from one government organisation or another, which means we need to adapt and change. So the good news, help is in hand, as always, with Small Biz Matters. Donnie Buchanan is an expert in his field. He supports small business and medium-sized business to navigate this change and support them through the process. After working at Xero to implement complex and compliant-heavy software into large accounting firms, he knows the most practical way to break down the steps of change management and avoid putting all your stakeholders offside. Welcome to the show, Donnie.
Thanks, Alexi. Good to be here.
Now, we had an awesome chat, actually, when we met at a cafe a few weeks ago, because I have to say it's like this. It's a kind of a fence-sitting thing. On one hand, I'm quite fearful of change. I'm not a fan. I like things to stay the same. But we live as small businesses in an ever-evolving world. It's almost daily you'll get an email from one of your software companies going, hey, we've done something new and you have to do it right now to be the most efficient possible thing that you can, and you can't keep on top of it. So just broadly, how do we break down that thought process and I guess that the walls that come up as soon as we start talking about change in small business? How do you get past that hurdle to begin with?
Yeah, well, good question. Like, it's always a discussion that happens internally with staff. Generally, my experience is with smaller businesses, so especially small accounting firms, and usually one partner, maybe two tops. And what happens is they start to try and execute a goal. And, the thing is, then they start sort of getting lost in information coming in from their network and from software companies and some of their staff. And all of a sudden, they're kind of like, how do I do this? What do I do? When do I do it? Who should do it?
So do you think it's really like an idea just pops into the business owner's head and goes, oh, well, we need to be better at this. And then they start researching it, and they probably expect some of their staff to research it, and everybody's going at different tangents. And then all of a sudden, if you ever do come together to actually implement it, it's one big fat mess.
Yeah, that's usually when I arrive.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is the point at which you think about bringing in a consultant. So basically, why is it good to sort of bring in a consultant to implement change in your business? Never mind just the software, but just in general. If you're implementing change, why do you need someone to hold your hand?
Yeah, good question. Look, ultimately, a consultant is usually quite passionate, and they've ended up there because they just somehow landed there. You don't see many people sort of getting trained to be a consultant at uni.
True.
They become them through experience, and they realise, hey, there's a bit of a gap here. I like this stuff. Why don't I do it? So all of a sudden, you get a reputation, and people start calling. But the value is it really comes down to experience, and those businesses, they can't generate the experience. They haven't got the time. So they rely on you and your experience to get them over the line.
And so when you're engaging with a consultant, what are your top tips for what questions do you need to ask that person?
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, good point. Like, I always take the accounting firm as the example. They would need to probably ask them to prove some type of results.
Yep.
Because ultimately they're going to pay some money and they need to know what the outcome is. Generally, it's results-based. Mm-hmm. So, a good consultant will have some type of yardstick saying, hey, if you engage me, you will get X outcomes. Hopefully they can quantify them, because most people are interested in profit, money. So that'll be number one. And then they need to really understand the industry. And for me, I'm an accountant, 10 years in accounting. I've got a master's in accounting. I worked at Xero. I've worked in practices. So you really
your dig is accounting.
It certainly is.
So you want to look for someone who's basically got longevity and experience. And I guess I like what you said at the beginning of the program about them being passionate about you don't want someone coming in and just going, okay, so what are we doing? They need to have a bit of an enthusiasm about them, because they're going to be, I guess, dragging you and your staff on this journey, and they need to be a bit of a rah-rah person. They need to be a bit of a salesman.
Well, 100%. I've seen what didn't work, and that drove me. I saw these people suffering, and I just went, this ain't right.
Right.
I know where you're trying to go. I'm going to figure out a way to get you there.
Yeah. And so, you're obviously having someone that's well developed and understands the industry quite well. And then, do you want someone, say, for example, you are doing it within regards to software or some major process change? Should they have gone through that themselves? It's like the old adage, you never get a business coach that doesn't run a business. Should you also have a consultant that's been through that process themselves, or been through it a few times with different firms?
Oh, 100%. That's where you get your scars, and those scars are what drive your passion, and they really get you over the line and win the customer, because, you can't... Look, ultimately, one of my biggest things is if you can't put yourself in the shoes of the person you're serving,
yes,
then you are going to struggle to meet that person's needs.
So let's talk about the 4 Ps. So we've got, product, platform, people and process, which is a bit of a cornerstone for the way that you work, not necessarily the way that all consultants work. But I thought it might be useful to talk through the listeners about this process, because it doesn't matter what you're implementing, if it's software or a process or some big, you've been taken over by another company and the whole thing needs to change. These are the 4 pillars that you're going to be working towards and working through. And I thought it might be good to help people through understanding the process of change management. So the first one is product.
Yep.
So why is this the first one, and what exactly does it mean?
Well, ultimately, anyone that is going to go through some type of change has some type of goal in mind, and generally it's profit, more money, growth in revenue, something like that, or a cut in costs. A lot of that comes down to the product they deliver. Once again, with accounting firms, generally when I go in, they want to streamline things in order to create capacity, in order to offer new services. So they really need to understand what their product is now, but also what they want it to be in the future. There's no point bringing in a platform if you don't know what your new product's going to be or what impact it's going to have on it. You really need to know where you are now and where you want to go.
So is it almost like you have to envisage what the end result's going to be in terms of, okay, what are you trying to achieve by rolling out this new process or this new piece of software? I liked what you were saying about capacity. I mean, that's, if anything, anybody who's implementing change is trying to improve capacity, because you're trying to, free up the burden of stuff that you're doing badly in order to increase a product or increase something, or, increase your staff's capacity to do more. Is that the fundamental and why you need to think of the end product and the end goal? Yeah,
well, with the 4 Ps, they all relate. The 4 Ps is really, it's like a decision framework where you're always deciding something, and what you'll find is every time a decision pops up, it generally fits into one of the 4 Ps, and then you'll notice that one is going to affect the other. I always say start with product, because they're your goals, and you've got to keep those in mind right at the very start, and then you can move on to the other ones. It's kind of like, okay, where are we going? Cool. Next step, how are we going to get there? The next 3 Ps. Do you often need to, when you're thinking about the end goal in mind, do you already have to have had the process in mind? Do you already have to have an idea about which software you're going to implement? Is that where you start and then you go, well, I need a consultant that can help me do that? Or do you just literally kind of start blind and go, look, we really want to just increase capacity. How do we do it? Yeah, well, that's when the platform, the second P, comes into play. It's kind of like once they've kind of established what their product is and what they want it to look like in the future, they go, right, okay, so what are we going to use? Salesforce, Xero, where are we going? G Suite, which one? And that's where the consultant's value is really high, is to look at the first P and go, okay, you want to go there.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, well, let's take a look at this platform over here and see if it enables that product.
Because you need to be thinking about because exactly, you need that product at the end to know what goal you're trying to attain in order to know what process. Because this is a problem with small businesses. There are so many options out there. I think a few of us are sort of familiar with maybe 10%. And then maybe someone in change management really needs to be across a whole suite of different products that you're going to implement, right? Would you have that expectation as well?
Yeah, exactly. That's where I sort of land in that sort of accounting firm space. I kind of go, you're really not going to get that from that product, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But if you piece it together with this, then, the opportunities are definitely there. So,
and also, obviously, the implementation and making sure everybody's using that. We'll get to that in a second because the people are a fairly thing. So the platform that you're using is crucial. And I guess one of the things that people are fearful about change management, and I'll put my hand up and say this as well about my practice, is I'm really scared of diving down the rabbit hole of learning a whole new, even if it's a small piece of software like a timekeeper, like a little, like a clock just to monitor the time my staff are doing. I'm scared to implement something like that, waste everyone's time, and then find out that it doesn't work. So I guess having a consultant alleviates that, but you wouldn't want to be diving down the wrong rabbit hole with someone and it not working. So that change management thing's quite important, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. And a good consultant will go through a pretty in-depth scope right at the very start, and that jumps into the other 4 Ps is, who are the people involved? What are the current processes? What are you trying to achieve? And, that's a classic example of people just choosing a software because maybe their mate said it was good. And then all of a sudden they realise, it doesn't quite fit my business though. Okay. I read all the reviews online and it all said, thumbs up. And now I've tried it and oops. I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah. So let's talk about your typical accounting firm, because obviously that's a good example of a consultancy business or someone who's just in services. And you need to have something that looks after the fundamental part of your business, the platform that everything runs on. But then you've also got to have a CRM, and you've also got to have something that's going to look after your cloud-based documentation. So how are you supporting all that documents and then also then the workflow for your staff? So often you start, like you were saying at the beginning of the show, you kind of pick away at it and you go, well, that's a problem we're trying to solve, but often the problem is much greater. How do you not like that? Like, it's actually when you've got a house and you get a handyman in and you get them to do 2 things and they're there for 4 days because they found so much stuff that needs to be fixed. It's a bit like that with a small business. So how do you not bracket creep all of those services? How do you just compartmentalize it a little bit?
Oh, you kind of don't.
You do. You allow it to just flow, right? Yeah,
that's the thing. That's a really good example, because things just turn up that you don't expect. Like everyone's like. Example accounting firm, you kind of expect, the services they sell will be very similar across all different accounting firms, but internally there's all these different competing factors, people, processes, motivations and that type of thing. And all of a sudden it can get really out of hand. So it's often very, very difficult to scope. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about those different stakeholders, obviously the business owner and the staff, but someone we haven't mentioned is clients.
Yep.
So a lot of times we put off putting in change because we don't want to frighten our clients away because we're doing it too often. Do you think that's a really good reason why you should try and do it all at once and then roll it out across the practice?
100%. It's the first thing I say, and when a potential client has engaged me for a bit of a scope, one of the first things I like to do is always remind them, don't forget about your customer. Every decision we make, is there going to be an impact on your customer? If there is it good or bad? Because because they get lost. They all get lost amongst all the information coming in. And I keep referring them back to, hey, your customer. Don't upset your customer. Big problem.
And then if anything else, they're the ones who need a bit of hand-holding through the change management as well, don't they?
Yeah.
Oh, look, we're going to take a quick break here on Small Biz Matters, and when we come back, we've been talking about platform and the actual product, and we're talking about the 4 Ps here with Donnie Buchanan, all about change management. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the big one. I think this is the big one, the people who are involved, the stakeholders who are humans that we've got to think about when implementing change. You are listening to Small Biz Matters with Alexi Boyd. We'll be back after this. So, Donnie, we're talking all about change management. And actually, that was a really good example about single touch payroll. Because do you think there's a generalised fear when the government, I mean, they have said quite publicly that this is the biggest change to the tax system since the GST. Do you think there's a general fear among businesses when the ATO does something like this?
Oh, 100%. I'm an accountant and I get scared.
And I know what to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's not a big change in this case. I mean, the thing that frustrates me, I think, when the ATO does these change things is that they are ripping the Band-Aid off with this one, which is good. Like when they did the superannuation clearinghouse thing. How long did that take? 2.5 years? Took them ages. They keep on extending the deadline. But I really do believe that this is quite a clear and distinct deadline. They've gone out there. They've told a lot of people. Your accountant should know about it. Your bookkeeper absolutely will know about it. So go and get some help. Go and get some information. And there's tons of it out there. There's really no excuse because if you run a business, you really are. You're absolutely aware of it by now, surely. Yeah,
well, that's the thing is I've had plenty of inquiries and, a lot of the times I say to them, look, this may sound painful, but guess what? You don't have to do this job anymore. You don't have to do that job anymore. And they're like, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, yeah, there's benefits. You just got to get with it.
Yeah, and also it's there to protect the employee. So often with these big changes that we see from government, they're not trying to be horrible to us. They are actually doing it to protect the little guys and often sometimes to protect small business as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it's a great thing. Look, at the end of the day, when people want to go for loans or if they need, they want to get their tax return done quickly, it's going to be so much easier for them, and they don't have to, ask for information, and the information's already there.
Yeah.
They can jump on MyGov and do the tax return.
Exactly. I think it feeds in quite nicely with what we're going to talk about now because we've been talking about change management just before the break. Anyone that missed it, we're talking about implementing change in your business. And it doesn't matter if it's like one singular process or if it's a complete overhaul. You've still got these 4 Ps, your pillars, if you will, Donnie, where we talk about your product. Just quickly, just overview what that product thing is again.
Okay, so product is, if you're going to implement change, you've got to know what your product is now and what you want it to be in the future.
Excellent. And then, of course, the platform is what are you going to use to implement that product?
Exactly. So technology, what type of platform are you going to implement in order to meet those product goals?
And then the third one, which we're going to talk about now, is of course people. Now we've got a bunch of people we need to deal with. We've got the business owner, who I can imagine with your role can often be the most difficult person to deal with, and then you've got the people within the business, and I guess to some extent you've got external people who may be consulting with the business who have to be part of the process, and lastly, although I shouldn't say lastly, is the client. Now, tell me again why it's important that you always think of the client first when you're implementing change.
Yeah, well, ultimately, you don't want to disrupt them and you don't want to make their life any more difficult than what it is now. I mean, you're delivering them what they want, clearly, otherwise they wouldn't be coming back. So, and under no circumstances do you want to compromise that. So that customer needs to be at the forefront of your decision-making all the time.
Is it a matter of really understanding your customers? I'm thinking back to when I redid my engagement letter, and there were quite a few changes because of cybersecurity issues and a whole bunch of other stuff that I needed to inform them about. And I made a really pretty, colourful email that was very clear and very well formatted and looked gorgeous. And I still had people... I didn't mind them asking questions, obviously, because that meant they at least read it. But I still had people having to chase them and say, have you read it? They go, no. Okay. Can I talk to you about it? So does it require a little bit of hand-holding with your end client as well to make sure they get it?
Yeah, if they're going to notice the change, absolutely. Like not all changes in platform actually... the customer sometimes doesn't even notice. For example, a tax return coming out of a new software just has a different colour and a different layout, and they might go... whatever, so it doesn't really affect them. But 100%, if you're not helping your customers through this same change, then it could lead to the 5th P, which I call pain.
Yeah, that's the P we don't want to talk about.
That's the one we're trying to avoid.
So talking about people, so you've made a decision.
Yeah.
Okay, and I guess the first thing you need to know is who it is going to affect, because you're trying to avoid it affecting with any pain with your clients. But do you need to isolate with each of these platforms who in your business is going to be involved in it? Is that a good starting point?
100%. And that's that. Look, the other P, processes, people and processes, the two work together the most, and they constantly overlap. And like I said, it's a decision framework. Every time you make a decision about a person, it'll be a process decision as well, because it's going to affect what they do and how they do it. Look, it's the biggest challenge I find, because it's really easy for me to say, look, the product does this, and we've got these different fields, and it's got this type of outcome for you. So it's like it's easy to estimate, what's going to happen with this platform. The hardest part about change is people, because they are complex and they have different motivations, and it's really unpredictable. I find it the greatest challenge, but also the best part, because number one is I get to meet people and see them in their raw environment, which is really cool. It really exposes me to the reality of what they do. And I just love it. Like some days I go into an accounting practice and I'll walk in and there'll be 12 staff sitting around a boardroom table, and they'll take one look at me and all I can feel is the holy water and the crucifixes coming out, because they know that I'm here to disrupt everything they do.
Yeah, because there's that element of fear. I mean, if you're putting in a plug-in into a piece of software, the software's not going to go, I'm not doing this because I'm just frightened. But people will do that, I suppose. And I guess it's not just you, but I guess it's the business owner as well that needs to roll out even the thought of implementing change. And is that their role? Is that the business owner's role, is to manage the staff expectations and to manage the people involved, or is it still the consultant's role as well, or is it a bit both?
Yeah, it's always a mixture of both. That's the thing, is like people engage consultants on different levels because of their generally their budget, and we probably do both. We look, like accounting firm partner, him and I would work, her and I would work together and sort of figure out the impact. I always in my scope say, how many staff have you got? Can you tell me their experience levels? Well,
speaking of that, let's talk about the different ways of rolling it out. So what are the different ways that you can roll out any sort of change?
Well, that's the thing, is I'm involved when an accounting firm moves to an new online platform, like, there's maybe a half a dozen components over a 3-year journey. So, I sort of get involved in the majority of those. And, with the people, we really need to sit down and say, right, okay, so, even down to how old is this person? Are they going to be around in 5 years? Maybe we shouldn't really give them that many tasks. We should those discussions are real. They need to be had. And things like, have you got any juniors coming through? Oh, great. Is there anyone that's really passionate about this stuff? Maybe we should, give them lots of tasks. Or what's going on over here? Are these people, they want to challenge, they want to change, they want to do things. So we sort of look at all the different players in the game.
Do you have to also think about their pay grade and what they're able to do, and not give them too much in that they should be paid more if they're going to start being basically managing other staff through the rollout?
Yep.
Is that something you've got to look at as well? Is it what their current roles are and if they need to be paid more?
Yeah, exactly. And obviously that choice lies with the business owner about whether they're going to get a pay increase or not. But one of the really good things about working in this space is that you get to see development in a person, growth, because they love the challenge. Some of them just stick their hand up like they're in the classroom. Me, I want to do this. And then someone like sitting there, arms folded, going, I can't stand this guy. Who is this guy? Get him out of here. Get him out of here. I can feel the daggers from across the room. But I love that. I love breaking down. I love building the rapport. And it comes back to me as a consultant, putting myself in the shoes of every single person in that room if I can, and looking at myself.
Let's talk about, are you a fan of picking up your staff and taking them away for a weekend or for a few days, paid retreat, where you help them implement the change? Do you think that's good for everyone, or are there certain businesses that doesn't work for?
Yeah, 100%. Classic example, I'm going to Watson's Bay with an accounting firm on Friday to do a 4 days training, implementation, laptops, beer and fish and chips. I mean, what better way
tough.
What better way to get an implementation underway?
Yeah, so do you think it's good to remove your staff out of the environment?
100%. Make them relax, give them a treat. At the end of the day, you don't want them throwing their hands up in the air and walking away. You really got to massage them through this journey.
Okay. Yeah. So the people thing is really quite important, isn't it? And I guess you mentioned before when we were sitting down and chatting, it's a real balancing act. And it's about balancing those nervous personalities with those who are putting their hands up and saying, yep, I'm ready to go. I'm looking forward to this. I really want the change. And I guess it does come down to personalities. Yeah,
and like I said, the biggest part, the biggest challenge in being a consultant and using the 4 Ps is working with those people. And they look. At the end of the day, when I put myself in the shoes of someone that came into the business to change how everything works, then all of a sudden, that's your livelihood. The wages you pay, your mortgage, your kids through school, everything like that. no wonder they're nervous. They're thinking to themselves, am I going to be able to do this? When was the last time I went to school? 15, 20 years ago, you know, and you feel it when you're dealing with them. And all you got to do is you just got to remind them that this is a goal-focused outcome, and you are part of it. But you just need to stay with us on this journey. We're going to get you there.
And I suppose a bit of reassurance in that, saying that, well, you're not going to lose your job if you don't implement this change.
Yeah. Well, ultimately,
or are
they don't.
you?
Well, ultimately, the employees do not have a choice.
This is true.
And that's the thing, is I kind of remind them, saying, look, you know, you can love this or you can hate this, but either way, it's not stopping. There's a decision made by your employer. So I'm here to make it as painless as possible for you.
Yeah.
And I've been in your shoes, and that's the good thing about my experience, is I can turn to them and say, look, I've done this. I've been exactly where you're sitting. I know what you're thinking. You're going to be fine, but you just got to work with me. Stop pushing back.
And that is something we were saying before about the importance of a consultant actually having a lot of empathy and understanding, and been through the process with, you know, I guess it's a lot of reassurance when you say, I've been through this with exactly this sort of size practice with these sort of people before. It's going to be okay. We're going to get to the end of it. Do you find that with the more nervous people, the process takes longer in terms of time?
It did at the start when I was inexperienced, but what I've developed over time is what you will know as rapport, and that can come, like a lot of our communication, about two-thirds of effective communication is body language. Sitting there, you know, being open, actually standing next to and almost mirroring them physically can also bring some type of energy. Like it's an interesting, like I've started studying neuro-linguistic programming. I don't know if you've...
Yeah, we've had someone on the show before come on and talk about the importance of that, understanding that when you're doing any sort of public speaking, whether it just be meet and greets or networking, or really that sort of neuro-linguistic programming, exactly that. So yeah, that was an awesome show actually.
Yeah, well, what it is, it's a behavioural science, and what it is it's techniques for really effective communication. That's where I found it's valuable in my change management, is working with those people when you can feel the barriers up, and you can all the negative vibes, and you just want to turn it around. So you got to sort of build that rapport.
Is it a bit like tradie speak? You know, when a tradie comes into your house and you immediately like lose all of your ability to speak in long, complex sentences because you want to speak at their, just to make them feel a bit more comfortable because they've come in your home. It's kind of that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's exactly like that.
It's that mirroring, isn't it? Yeah, you want to go. I'm with you. I'm just like you are. I'm going to make you feel a bit better than you feel right now, and you don't need to be nervous.
Yeah, and I know the things that really upset accountants and then really make them happy, like spreadsheets.
Yeah.
I love spreadsheets.
Pretty spreadsheets.
I start talking about spreadsheets to them, and they're like, oh.
Excellent.
He's talking our language.
He speaks our language, just like you do with the tradie. We're going to take a quick break here on Small Biz Matters, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the fourth P, the process, a little bit more with Donnie Buchanan. You're listening to Triple H 100.1 FM. This is Alexi Boyd, and Small Biz Matters will be back after this. And you're live in the studio with Triple H 100.1 FM. This is Small Biz Matters with Alexi Boyd. Those of you who have just tuned in, we have been talking all about small business education with Donnie Buchanan. We're talking about change management, in particular, perhaps rolling out a piece of software in amongst your staff. But this, of course, all of these processes and these theories can be applied to any sort of change management you've got in your business. Before the break, we were talking about people being often the biggest sticking point, the biggest hurdle, such a bunch of personalities that you're dealing with, and not forgetting about all your people stakeholders, your staff, your contractors, your clients, you, the business owner. Is the business owner, are they, in your experience, Donnie, are they the most difficult to deal with? Are they the most reluctant for change? Or is it better to, what I'm asking, is it good to engage with a consultant when you've made the decision, or perhaps when you're just going, and just thinking about this?
Both. Yeah. The thing is, yeah, I get customers coming to me not sure about why they're even talking to me. What do you do again, Donnie? Okay, so let me explain. You've been referred to me because, you're thinking of making a change. And a lot of the people that refer to me actually hope that I will seal the deal for them.
As you help them make a decision?
Yeah, and it's about the confidence, knowing that the confidence that they've got someone like me in their corner to get them where they want to go.
And that's what a good consultant would do, is I guess we're talking about hand-holding, aren't we? We're really, I mean, if someone's thinking about the change, I mean, we've got, like, as we were saying before the break, we got changes about the single-touch payroll, which are pushed upon us by government agencies. But then there's a lot of change management that's based in choice. So I guess what I'm saying is there a lot of people who need help to make that choice, but they know what's good for them. They know what they're trying to get to the end. Yeah,
like a lot of people, like you said, a good example is when the new laws come in, you know, they kind of get scared into acting. But some of them just, some of them free up time and they go, oh, God, I've had this idea for about 5 years, but I've never found the time. And all of a sudden I've got like 4 weeks of nothing. Why don't I... Who's that guy's name again? Donnie who? You know, next minute they're calling up. Was it you I was talking to 18 months ago?
And so it can be a bit of a long process as well. So I guess what I'm saying, those of you out there who are thinking about change management at any level, I guess having the conversation with someone, it's good to do it at any point. Let's talk about processes now, because this comes hand in hand with people. And the reason for that is because the people are your key stakeholder in this situation. You're not going to be talking to your computer and asking if it's okay for you to plug in a new piece of software. It's the people who need to do it. Why do processes and people go so hand in hand together?
Yeah, well, it comes back to that product goal is generally revenue growth or cost cutting or cost cutting. Or both. What it is once you have, you know, we'll go back to all four. So you've chosen, you know, your product, you've chosen your platform, the people have already been there, you might bring some new ones in, but the fourth one goes hand in hand with the people. How are we going to do it? You know, and it comes down to a lot of things like, creating an operations manual or checklists or reinventing the entire checklist or even producing more reports that they couldn't get in their other platform and things like that. And those processes are ultimately, you know, the right people using them is where you win, because that's kind of the loose end. You've chosen your product, you've chosen your platform, but the 3 and 4, people and processes, that's constantly evolving during probably a 12 to 24 month, and especially for accounting firms, that's the sort of like the journey of people and processes. Oh, we think we're going to do it this way. All right, yeah, Donnie's given us this sort of guide over here, so let's put that into play. Oh, we didn't get the outcomes that Donnie promised. Well, why don't we go back to Donnie and, Donnie's told us.
So expect a bit of a managing and massaging of the process.
Absolutely.
When you were talking just then, I was thinking about, you know, the product, the end goal at the bottom, and then you've got the product to the end goal. The platform's in the middle.
Yep.
And then your process is kind of the flow chart to get down to the actual product at the end.
Yeah.
And I guess the people, it's each of those steps is who's doing what is the very important part. Is that what you mean by how the people and the processes come together? Yeah,
well, the people are using the processes. That's the thing, is they're using, like, with the accounting firm example, generally they do the same tasks. Every accounting firm I go into generally does the same thing.
Yeah.
Not 80 to 90% of the work they do is similar across all my client base. So it's the people using the processes. If that's not done properly and followed, and they use old habits from old platforms, that's where they lose the efficiency they were trying to gain.
Yes.
And, you know, a lot of it's habitual.
Yes.
And a lot of the time, and as I was getting back to neuro-linguistic programming, is I have to get into their mindset and actually adjust it for them. Adjust is probably a good way to describe it. And, it's along the lines of establishing the right processes, but they're always evolving.
But I guess you have to sell it in terms of not only the person, but also them understanding that their end goal is going to be making their lives easier too.
Yep.
It's not just about the business being better, it's actually them going to be better as well. Because
absolutely.
They're going to be freed up to maybe do something that they're more interested in. And you want to take away all those menial tasks.
Yeah.
Because that's what quite often these software things are supposed to do, meant to make our lives easier and try and do that as well. Do you think that's where the fear factor comes in? Because I think that, if I've got so efficient at doing it this way, if you make me do it a different way, I'm not going to be as efficient. Is that one of the fear factors?
100%. That's the main fear factor. It's like, like I said back before, their livelihood. They earn their income to pay for their family through what they're doing. You know, and if you don't sort of make them realise that, hey, that's not going to change. It could actually even improve for you, because you're going to develop some really cool new skills. Your boss is going to love you, and not only that, we're going to measure it so he can actually see the results.
Do you sometimes, if you have to get people over the line, go, listen, you're going to get a bit of an accreditation or a certification with this particular software platform, and if things don't work out with this employer, then you get to take that knowledge with you. Is that sometimes the way to get them across the line?
Yeah, well, I try not to have that conversation.
Yeah, not in front of the business owner. Yeah, definitely not.
But 100%, look, and that's one of the amazing things about what the cloud accounting environment has done is a lot of people can jump straight out of a firm with a very low startup budget and just start in a practice straight away.
Yeah.
Phone, laptop, car.
Okay, so flipping it back around now, is that a fear for the business owner 100%. Where they go, oh my God, you've got to train up all my staff
100%.
And they're going to leave?
100%. And I remind them of it all the time. I'm like, you know what? Don't forget this is how easy it is for your clients to go. So for your staff to leave.
So it is a risk factor for them.
100%.
So the more beer and fish and chips you can give them during this process to make them feel good about it, the better?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Look, there's a massive disruption in accounting practices right now. And it goes...
Oh, look, there's disruption in anything. You say to a business owner single touch payroll and they're going to freak out. That's not just accounting firms.
Yeah.
You talk to a business owner about getting in the cloud and, what happens if your house burns down and everything goes with it. There's a way to avoid that. But you've got to change the way you work or, stop using your business cards in a Rolodex as your CRM. So all of those things, I think, in any implementation, in change implement. And that's what I want today's listeners to get out of this program is the fact that it doesn't matter if you're talking about a whole firm change with 15 or 20 people or it's just you and you're doing something that changes, one aspect of your business. Think about the 4 Ps.
Yep.
Think about people. You still got to have people. There are still people involved. You're involved. Yeah. Your staff are, your clients are involved. Your consultants are involved. Think about the end product. What are you trying to achieve?
Yep. And
then think about the platform. There is, aside from using consultants such as yourself, there's obviously a lot of information out there. You can go to your professional association. You can talk to your colleagues in the small business world.
Yep.
And you can test stuff.
You can. The thing about testing stuff is the majority of software companies out there generally have the same goal, and that is to build a scalable model. And with that comes they want to grow revenue and they want to keep customer acquisition and cost to serve costs down. Generally, that might be at the expense of us as the people that are looking at the software. And, you go into the help centre and it's really difficult, and a lot of the software companies say, you can do this.
Yeah.
You can do it, no problem.
But they're not thinking of it in terms of the person who's implementing change.
Exactly, yeah. So there's a lot of risk in trying to do it yourself.
Plus the time. It's not even really just the cost, because so many of these software companies offer 1 month for free, don't they? It's not that. It's like you could literally lose a whole month while you're trying to implement something that just didn't work in the end. Yeah,
but not only that, you don't really know what your outcome looks like. Without a consultant. It's kind of like a lot of people, I think people these days get addicted to software trials because they like the shiny bells and whistles and everyone else is using it and people are talking about it on social.
What's the expression called? App stacking? I don't think that's a good thing. I think I'd like to see not app stacking, but rather app efficiency.
Yeah, subscription addiction is a new one I've heard the other day.
And subscription creep.
Subscription creep,
yes. Everyone sit down and look at how many different subscriptions you're paying per month and then add them all together and go, do I really need Netflix and Stan? Are my kids really wedded to those TV shows? How much trouble I'm going to get into? Yeah. So all these things we could talk about when it comes to change management, because we are in it and this is the world that we live in and it's the way we operate with businesses. I wanted to say thank you very much for coming on the show today, Donnie.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, where can people find out a little bit more about you and your business?
You can reach me on LinkedIn. So it's Donnie, spelt like Donnie Brasco, DONNIE, Buchanan. I've got a website called entrycounts.com. You can jump on there. You can book me. There's a Calendly link, and you can grab me for a 15-minute phone call, have a chat, let me know what you're thinking. Plenty of ways to get in touch. There's some great resources on there as well, Donnie. So
plenty
of resources.
Sharing them. We might share some of those on our Small Biz Matters Facebook page. Speaking of which, if you've missed any of today's program, you can, of course, catch up on smallbizmatters.com.au, where there are over 150 podcasts just like this one. And guess what, everyone? We have yet to repeat a topic. So if you want to get yourself educated and find out all about how to run a business, not just grow it, but actually how to run it, then get in touch. We, of course, broadcast for ATO and soon ASIC as well. So find out what's coming up on the show as well. Plus, you don't forget about our event calendar, where you can find out all the events that are coming up on the Upper and Lower North Shore, and subscribe to our newsletter to find out who's coming on the show. Thank you once again for coming on the show, Donnie.
Awesome to be here. We'll
have another great guest next week. You've been listening to Small Biz Matters with Alexi Boyd. We'll see you all next week.